Welcome back to Forge College. Today, we're getting right into the strict engineering schematics for your Solana data layouts. If you're following along in our Introduction to Data Handling in Solana module, you already know that building dApps here requires absolute precision. So this explainer is our Borsh Serialization deep dive. We're going to translate your beautiful code into the raw bytes that Solana actually stores, and, maybe more importantly, we'll figure out how to get them back out without turning your data into complete unusable gibberish.
Here is our blueprint for today. We're looking at the data layout problem, Borsh serialization rules, mapping structs to bytes, future-proofing with versioning, and finally, round-trip validation. Let's jump right in.
Section 1. The data layout problem, bridging the off-chain and on-chain gap. So here's the core issue we're facing. Solana accounts really do not hold your hand, at all. They just store a raw, contiguous array of bytes. The runtime doesn't interpret those bytes for you. That means your off-chain client, like your TypeScript front-end, and your on-chain Rust program must have absolute, undeniable agreement on exactly how to read and write that data. If one side thinks it's reading a string and the other side actually wrote a number, yeah, you're going to have a very bad time.
Enter Borsh. That stands for Binary Object Representation Serializer for hashing. You can just think of it as our universal translator. It's a deterministic binary serializer. Now, deterministic is just a fancy way of saying it packs the exact same logical value into the exact same byte sequence every single time, with zero surprises. It completely prioritizes compactness and exact byte-level consistency, which is honestly perfect for Solana, because every single byte of storage on-chain costs precious soul.
Moving on to Section 2, Borsh Serialization Rules. It's basically Tetris with bytes. Let's crack open the manual here. Borsh packs data like a brutal, high-stakes game of Tetris where absolutely zero padding is allowed.
The very first rule you gotta know is little-endian byte ordering. And I know this can feel completely backwards at first. Little-endian basically dictates that integers, like a U16 or a U64, are stored with their least significant byte first. Imagine paying someone $500, but you literally hand them the pennies first. So when you're inspecting the raw hex data yourself, just remember, numbers are packed from the smallest byte to the largest byte.
Okay, taking a look here, this spec sheet shows exactly how these different types get packed. A U8, that's a simple 1 byte. A U64 numeric counter, that takes 8 bytes, again, in little-endian. But for dynamic types like strings and vectors, Borsh uses a 4-byte length prefix. It basically writes a U32 that shouts, hey, the next X number of bytes belong to this string. And what about structs? Well, they are packed in exact declaration order, zero padding in between, not a single wasted byte.
Section 3. Mapping structs to bytes, the profile schema. In a lot of other Forge College courses, we dive into some highly complex architectures. But for right now, let's just take a standard, everyday user profile and map it directly to bytes so we can see this in action. This perfectly illustrates the core contract of serialization. Your on-chain Rust struct and your off-chain TypeScript class, they must mirror each other exactly. We're talking field by field, type by type, order by order. If TypeScript somehow thinks the handle comes before the balance, your entire program is just going to read total nonsense.
All right, so let's serialize it step by step. First up, we write the version, which takes exactly 1 byte. Then the initialization flag, that's another 1 byte. Next is the owner array, which is a public key, so that's 32 bytes, written out completely unprefixed. Then we've got the balance, our little-endian 8 bytes, and finally, the handle. Remember that rule for strings we just talked about? We first write a 4-byte prefix declaring exactly how long the handle is, followed by the actual UTF-8 characters. The whole shebang is packed incredibly tight, right up against each other.
Because Borsh strictly forbids any padding, we can actually mathematically prove the exact size of our specific profile account. 1 byte plus 1 byte plus 32 plus 8 plus a 4-byte prefix, and let's say a 5-character handle. Add those all up, and you get a beautifully precise number. In this specific sample case, it will be exactly 79 bytes. Why does this matter? Well, because you need to know exactly how much space to pay for when you go to allocate this account on-chain.
But let me ask you this. What happens if you need to revise your blueprint? Let's say your dApp is live. Thousands of users already have their 79-byte profile accounts out there, and your product team suddenly says, hey, we need to add a user bio.
That brings us to Section 4, Future-proofing with versioning, avoiding garbage values. If you change the field order without a strict plan, existing accounts are going to violently misalign. Your Rust program will try to read a 4-byte string prefix, but it'll actually be reading the middle of someone's public key. The result? Pure garbage data.
To prevent a total catastrophic breakdown of your data, you really must design for the future on day one. Borsh does not have built-in schema evolution. It's not going to magically figure out that you added a new field. Because of this, you should always include a version tag, usually a U8, as the very first field in your struct. You can also use enum discriminants to handle different structural variants of your data over time, or even reserve optional fields for backwards compatibility. But the golden rule here? Never change the declaration order blindly. Always plan for version 2 while you're still writing version 1.
Section 5. Round-trip validation, stress testing the prototype. Drawing heavily on what we learned in our previous lesson, testing pipeline fundamentals, it is time to put this layout to the test. You really shouldn't just cross your fingers and hope your TypeScript and Rust match. You need to prove it.
Round-trip validation is honestly exactly what it sounds like. Step 1, you serialize your original data off-chain in TypeScript. Step 2, you output that into a hex byte buffer. Step 3, you take that exact same buffer and deserialize it on-chain in your Rust tests. And step 4, you assert logical equality. Does the final struct match your original intent perfectly? If the bytes match and the data matches, your schematic is rock solid.
Okay, let's lock in your core takeaways for this engineering blueprint. First, master the little-endian packing rules, and remember there is absolutely zero padding. Second, compute your exact account sizes mathematically before you allocate anything. Third, build versioning right into your initial schematics using a version tag or enums. And lastly, rigorously round-trip test your bytes between off-chain and on-chain pairs.
Keep these verified layouts super handy. You are definitely going to need them, because in our next Blueprint Explainer, storing and retrieving account data on Solana, we'll use these exact, validated serialization helpers to actually allocate space, write data, and retrieve real account data on the network. This foundational blueprint makes all of those future steps safe, predictable, and way less stressful.
So, I'll leave you with this question. Are your bytes truly deterministic? Can you guarantee what they look like on both sides of the network? I highly recommend you visit forge.college to continue your Web3 learning journey and dive even deeper into Solana's data handling architectures. Try scaffolding out your own serialization helpers today. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.